Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. My name is Shannon, and today we are going to talk about some classic books that I have been reading over the past few months. And in one case, I've been trying to read for the past couple of years. So let's start with that one. David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Now, unfortunately, I have decided to DNF this. David Copperfield is a very well-known Victorian classic, and in this story, we are following David Copperfield, who is partly based upon Charles Dickens' own experiences. And we're following David from childhood through to adulthood. And this is considered a Bildungsroman, and it was published serially starting in 1849 and ending in 1850, and then I think put into full book format in 1850. And in this story, David faces hardships, poverty, cruelty, but also kindness and love. He meets many very colorful characters along the way: his cruel stepfather, Mr. Murdstone, the kind Peggotty family, the eccentric Mr. Micawber, and the conniving Uriah Heep. As David matures, he grows and learns from experiences and then hopefully finds happiness. And although the primary theme in this book appears to be growth and change, Dickens is also making social commentary on Victorian England. He's got the plight of prostitutes, the status of women in marriage, the criminal justice system, children in factories. This is a well-known book. It's well-loved, and I had started this a couple of years ago, and I was enjoying it while I was in it, and then for whatever reason I put it down, and then I just could never bring myself to come back to it. And I got a pretty good chunk of the way through. I want to say I got at least like over 200 pages through this book, and I just have no idea why I did not want to go back to it. Maybe because the story just never seemed to end. I mean, Dickens is a wordy bro. This was being serialized, so he had to do some do some padding. After a couple years of this sitting on my shelf with a bookmark in here and it's just staring at me and I just did not want to pick it up, I decided to call it, and I'm just, you know what? Let's call it a DNF. But I am not going to entirely give up on this story. Maybe I will try it again in the future, and or maybe I'll try an audiobook. See if that can help me get through it. And if you know of any really good audio versions of this, please let me know and I will possibly check that out. So this next one I'm currently in the middle of, and that is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, or Lev Tolstoy, I think is how we're actually supposed to be saying it, but it's anglicized as Leo. Whatever. This is the Pevere and von Konsky translation. Now, this is actually a reread for me. I read it over 20 years ago, the Constance Garnett version. However, I remember nothing about this book. And although I know the general premise of the story, this is pretty much a new book for me. I'm reading this very slowly. I started it in January, and I'm only reading like 1 or 2 chapters a day, and I'm really trying to take it in. I'm underlining passages. I'm really kind of soaking this in. So Tolstoy is another wordy bro. But unlike Dickens, I'm not feeling that Tolstoy is padding things. Everything he says, there's a reason why he's saying it. This is the tragic story of Anna, a married aristocrat who falls in love with the dashing Count Vronsky, which leads to an affair and a social scandal, and then the ultimate downfall of Anna. And then parallel to Anna, we are following Konstantin Levin, who is a landowner and seeking meaning in his life through marriage and honest work. Now, I'm not disliking this reading. However, I'm finding that I literally do not care about anybody in the story. I just do not care. I don't care about Anna. I don't care about Levin. And I don't care about anybody else in this story. And so I don't know if this is the point. And like I said, I read it so many years ago, I can't remember how I felt about it. I feel like this story should just be called Levin, because it seems like Tolstoy is working out his own personal shit with with Levin's character. We hardly see Anna. So I'm not entirely sure why he called his Anna Karenina, because it should be, Levin working out his shit. I feel like Levin really needs to get over himself. However, I do notice that Tolstoy gives Levin a lot of depth in character, but he gives Anna nothing. And so that's probably why I'm not feeling anything for her. I'm not feeling her passion. I'm not feeling her love. I'm not feeling her despair. I'm feeling nothing about her. He is giving her nothing. And she feels like a shell or a caricature. And maybe this was intentional. I'm not entirely sure. Of course, Hollywood has touted this as, the epic love story. All of the adaptations focus on the passionate romance between Anna and Vronsky. However, I am not feeling any passion or love in this story. I'm just not feeling it, which leads me to believe that Tolstoy likely is not writing a love story. Shocking. Most Hollywood movies are taking a lot of stories, making them into love stories when they were not intended that way. Hello, Wuthering Heights. I'm looking at you. So anyway, that leads me to believe that this is not a love story, that Tolstoy's intention is more philosophical. And so I now need to alter my outlook and expectations as I go through the story. And I'm a good chunk of the way through. So here's my bookmark here. So I'm like almost halfway through. I'm going to have to alter my expectations for the rest of the book, and maybe I won't put it down and then forget about it because I just don't care about any of these characters. We'll see. Cheerful Weather for the Wedding by Julia Strachey. And this is a beautiful Persephone Classics edition. This story was published in 1992 by Hogarth Press, which was owned by Virginia and Leonard Woolf. And this story takes place over the course of one single day, a very brisk spring March day in the English countryside. It's Dolly Thatcham's wedding day, and she has some second thoughts, and so she's trying to give herself some liquid courage up in her room by drinking a bottle of rum. And then downstairs, her friend and former admirer, possible former lover, stalks around, sulks, insults everyone. Her mother is completely oblivious to all that is around her. Her younger sister Kitty is bossing everyone around. The cousins are arguing, and the groom-to-be will not let Dolly take her pet turtle on their honeymoon. So we've got a lot of chaos going on. I had a great time with this book. It's very sharp, very funny, fascinating observations about human behavior, and it's no plot, all vibes. Teeny, slim little thing. I love me some no plot, all vibes. And you can finish this in one sitting, which is pretty much what I did. And then after I read it, I also watched the 2012 movie adaptation with Felicity Jones, which on its own was good. If I hadn't read the story, I think I would have enjoyed the movie more, but I do feel like the movie kind of didn't get the spirit of this book. It was really more focusing on Dolly and Joseph, the former admirer slash lover, and kind of making that into the focus of the story. And I don't think that was supposed to be the focus. But it was beautifully filmed, impeccably casted, and it was a good movie. So on its own, it was good. As an adaptation of this, I mean, it was fine. Next, we have A Native Son by Richard Wright, and this was published in 1940, and it is Wright's debut novel. And also, it was the very first book by a Black author to be featured and picked by the Book of the Month Club. There was some censorship, however. The Book of the Month Club would not choose it unless certain passages were taken out of it, but this edition I have here includes all of the appropriate passages. And in this story, we are following 20-year-old Bigger Thomas, a Black man living in poverty on Chicago's South Side in the 1930s. And we are a witness to Bigger's psychological and social struggles in a deeply racist society before, during, and after he accidentally kills the daughter of his white, wealthy employer and then tries to cover it up. And then this accidental murder and cover-up leads to a chain of events that eventually ends to his capture and trial. This story explores themes of racism, poverty, fear, and systemic oppression. And Wright was intentionally showing us how societal forces shaped Bigger as a man and then subsequently his actions and his fate, at the same time not apologizing for Bigger's crimes. The story is broken up into 3 sections: fear, flight, and fate. And there are no chapters within these sections, which I found interesting. So it was just the 3 main sections of the book and no chapters within. And so there was really no good place to put the book down, walk away from it, digest things, and then come back to it. And I wonder, and I'm sure that that was intentional. Wright does an amazing job articulating Bigger's thoughts with all of its ups and downs and intricacies. And I could feel Bigger's anger, his confusion, his despair. And we as the reader are filled with angst as we watch Bigger make bad decision after bad decision. Wright pulls no punches in this book. Make no mistake, Bigger is not a sympathetic character. Yes, the murder was an accident, but Wright deliberately is giving us a protagonist who is not a good guy, either before or after the murder. Essentially, Wright was deliberately playing into what whites would expect from a Black man. So instead of giving us a good and innocent man dragged down by systemic racism, Wright is giving us a guilty man and then telling us that we made him this way. We as a society told Bigger and every other Black man in America from birth who they were and what they were supposed to be in our society. It was a very risky move, and Wright did actually get a lot of criticism for this approach. Now, I did find that some of the scenarios in this book were a little unrealistic, bordering on melodramatic, but this was intentional on Wright's part. He said that what he wanted to say to the reader was more important than its plausibility. And this edition here that I have contains the essay that Wright wrote after the publication called How Bigger Was Born, which discusses how and why Wright created a character such as Bigger. Really informative. Highly recommend you find an edition that includes that essay. Now, I can't say that I enjoyed this book. It's really, heartbreaking and sad and infuriating, and you're feeling all the things. It's not like I enjoyed watching this self and societal destruction, but I do believe that this is a very important read and it is still relevant today. So I do highly recommend picking this up. And last we have Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Loos. And this was first published in 1925. So this story is 100 years old this year. And it is written in epistolary format in the form of journal entries. And we are following Lorelei Lee, likely not her real name, who is a beautiful and witty blonde from Little Rock, Arkansas. We follow Lorelei's journal as she travels through New York, Europe, Hollywood, using her charm and good looks to attract wealthy men. She may seem naive and innocent, but she is very shrewd and very manipulative. She's giving us a satirical social commentary on society's obsession with wealth, status, beauty, while she is also capitalizing on such obsessions. And we're also hearing a whole lot about her friend Dorothy, who is brunette, and sort of giving the contrast of, beauty versus brains. I really enjoyed this. It was just so much fun. It was quick, funny, silly, and I am sure it caused a stir in 1925. Laura Lee is so dumb that she's brilliant. Basically the idiot philosopher trope. I just found that absolutely hysterical. I also loved hearing about her friend Dorothy's sharp and honest comments, as well as Lorelei's claims to being genteel and refined. And of course, the joke is that neither of them are refined or intellectual. This book has great things to say about women and class of the time. However, please note that this book does have a few incidents of casual racism that would have gone completely unnoticed at the time. So please take note of that. This edition I have here also includes the sequel, But Gentlemen Marry Brunettes, which was Dorothy's story. I felt it was not needed, but apparently Anita Loos had promised a sequel, so I guess she had to write something. And it wasn't Dorothy telling her own story, it was still Lorelai. You know, we get some backstory on Dorothy, but nothing about how she and Lorelai became friends. And the timeline was off. I thought Dorothy's story was in the past, but apparently it's somehow weaved into the present. Anyway, I do not recommend reading Brunettes at all, but I highly recommend reading Blondes. And it was just such a fun time, and it's a quick read, and you can probably get through it in a day. So that is all I have for you today. 5 classics that I've been reading or trying to read over the past few months. Have you read any of these? Please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day. Bye.